But listen, that old song, "Take Me Out to the Ball Game." Well, no, we can go up to Riverdale. We don't have to go out to Yankee Stadium, do we?
Riverdale, right. This is we're talking about Hebrew Home at Riverdale. It's a nursing home in the Bronx. And, a lot of being a nursing home in the Bronx, a lot of its residents are elderly Yankee fans who remember going to the ballpark, to going to Yankee Stadium in the days of DiMaggio and Mantle, and even going back to Gehrig and Ruth, even going back to the 1930s. There are some people in their 90s. So the home, which has kind of a tradition of devising different like reminiscence therapies to help its aging, whether people have dementia or Alzheimer's or none of those, and just could be assisted by jogging their memory for childhood memories, earlier memories. The home often pegs these programs that they come out, art therapy, that type of thing, to seasonal events. And now it's baseball season, and they have a very interesting kind of program going, which the head of the Hebrew Home, David Pomeranz, is on the line now to talk about. David, thanks a lot for coming on.
My pleasure.
So describe for listeners what this very interesting program that you guys have that uses the olfactory, or the sense of smell, to help with your residents.
So about 4 years ago, we created a immersive experience for people to come and enjoy baseball. They did it by listening to sounds of the original announcer Bob Shepard, who used to do the PA at Yankee Stadium, to hear the voices of Mel Allen and Phil Rizzuto. And while they listened to these sounds, they were confronted with artifacts, a locker from the original Yankee Stadium, seat cushions, turnstiles, seats, amongst this huge picture of the Yankee Stadium. So they had the experience of sort of listening and sort of being there and remembering. And then just last week, we took it to the next level, which was, as Corey mentioned, injecting the sensory element into it. For any of us, and myself included, who love to go to ball games, the experience of going to a game includes a lot of things, including the smell of the grass, the smell of the food, the smell of the beer. And so what we did was we worked with International Flavors and Fragrance. There's an international company that does smells and tastes and things, and they helped us to devise a system where we could create a push-button impact where people could get a puff, a burst of smell, which would allow them, while they're looking at the exhibit, to smell popcorn, to smell beer, smell a hot dog, to further their experience and to trigger memories of being in the ballpark itself.
So this is like the Willy Wonka movie. They press a button and they get some popcorn. They get the smell of popcorn. They get the smell of hot dogs, something like that.
Exactly right.
Right. And so this is, I should also say, because when I visited the home last week, or 2 weeks ago, when you kind of unveiled this in a way with all your residents there and people trying it out and that type of thing, it was, I had never seen this Yankees dugout kind of portion of the main lobby area when you walk in the home. But it was very interesting that you have like part of the old Yankees dugout. You have old bleacher seats or grandstand seats, whatever they were, ballpark seats for people to sit in, for your residents to sit in. Also, I would think, and you have old bats that players use and that type of thing, and a lot of other memorabilia in this Yankees, almost a mini Yankees Stadium museum, or as it were. And so this sense, this smell exhibit that you're talking about was kind of integrated into that exhibit, huh?
Yes, we just wanted to take it to the next level, and it was something missing. So you could touch things, you could hear things, but you couldn't smell things. And smell is just in everyday life. Sometimes you'll smell something walking on the street or in your home, and it takes you back to a place. You connect it to something, and that's true of these smells. These smells were really helpful to our residents and to people to really take them back to a place which was a very happy time for many of them, going to. This is an intergenerational experience. So for people, they remember going with their parents, taking their children, taking their grandchildren. So it really triggers a very positive time in their life when they were younger and more able to do things. And so that smell and this exhibit really is a wonderful vehicle for them to connect back to something that was very important to them. It also allows them, when they have visitors and their grandchildren there, to have those great baseball conversations that people like to have about, who was better, Phil Rizzuto or Derek Jeter, or, Roger Maris or Mark Teixeira. So it opens up a lot of conversation, and the smell, the piece that we just launched, really is an important element that was missing, that we feel very excited to be able to give that extra piece of connection to people so that they feel that we're hitting it on all fronts.
So, why is that good for them, for their mental health and that type of thing? When you get older and whatever type of naturally occurring memory loss, whether it's acute or just losing it gradually, this can cause some disorientation or discomfort, that type of thing. Why is it good for them to be connected with these memories?
Well, for many of the people that are getting older, a lot of their greatest times are behind them. So being able to not only live in the day and enjoy what's in front of them, but also be able to tap into things, because oftentimes their long-term memories are much more permanent in their mind. They tend to become more forgetful of short-term memory, and being able to tap into long-term memory not only is a sense of joy, but it's also a sense of strength. We have people go down there who remember things about baseball and details of games where they struggle to remember things about everyday life and what day of the week it is. So for some people, it really gives them a greater sense of security, and the ground they're standing on is to be able to talk about things which really are more permanently ensconced in a way that they can tap into it.
Right. Now, speaking of people whose greatest days are behind them, that would not include. That would not include. This is what I'm saying. Malachi McCord, who's sitting to my left here. So, Malachi, meet David and talk. What do you think of this exhibit that he's describing?
I think that's absolutely fantastic. And I was wondering, I had been there a few times because a friend of mine, Ann Mira, was there, and for quite a while. Do you recall her?
Well, and I'm not allowed by law to talk about anybody.
Oh, of course.
You cannot confirm or deny her existence.
That's right.
I want to respectfully say that I remember lots of residents very warmly and favorably.
I got you. Yes. So anyway, I can say that yes, she was there, and I visited her several times with her daughter Amy and Ben Stiller, and so. She was very happy there, as she was quite disabled at the end of her life. But in any case, is there a majority? Is there a male majority with memories of Yankee Stadium, or do the women also participate?
It's a great question, because certainly demographics are not in the favor of men as we get older.
Yeah.
We're probably about 82% women and 18% men as we get towards the older part. So there are many more women than men, but interestingly enough, the women have really tapped into this in a way that has been very beautiful, because they remember going with their husbands, they remember taking their children, they remember just as warmly and fondly as a place where families spent time, where they connected to people that they loved. So it's really doesn't have a gender bias to it. There might be some more men who have the hardcore memories of the statistics and the particular players, but in terms of the experience of going, the importance of family connecting, and what it was like to jump in the train or to jump in a car and go off and spend time as a family and to participate in an activity like that, it means just as much to the women as it does to the men.
And do you find that that people that are sort of fogged in by dementia or total loss, do they come out of it momentarily at the sight of a baseball glove, a seat, or a smell, or an odor, or something? Does that happen?
Yes, we're actually seeing some. I would say when you get past early dementia, when you get towards later stage dementia, no.
Yeah.
But people in the earliest stages, yes. And it's sort of a accidental thing for us along the way. We did it to sort of create an opportunity for people to reminisce without thinking about the impact it would have on people that have memory impairment. And our therapeutic activity staff started to use the space for activities, and they would put a ball and artifacts in people's hands, and voila, people who were only slightly confused were all of a sudden able to remember things about sports, much like music triggers people to remember when you hear a song, and sometimes people that are very forgetful can still sing the words to a song. We're finding also, and we're in the beginning stages of this, that sports has the same impact. That for people that are early in the confusing part of their disease, when triggered by artifacts, by sounds, by smells, they're able to tap into their memories of sports as well.
Are you? I think it sounds like you have a scientific basis for this project.
Well, we're working with some people that do. And as part of this project that we just did, we worked with some folks out of Massachusetts and the University of Massachusetts and the health system up there. We're trying to tap into people from a scientific perspective. The folks at the International Flavors and Fragrance, who are our partner in creating the smell, they do everything by science. And by working with them,
wouldn't they, being from Massachusetts, would they sneak in Red Sox stuff?
Yeah. Do you really want Boston involved in this, David, or what?
No, it certainly sparks that controversy that everybody likes to talk about,
yes,
Yankees and Red Sox. But on a serious note, yes, there is a science to the way the brain, and I'm not a scientist, so I won't pretend to be one, but there is a science to it in terms of the way the brain handles smells and senses and so forth. And we are looking to work with that organization to continue this work and to really turn the corner and make this into more of a scientific process so that we can expand this to include other aspects of our organization and our work, so that it's another tool in your belt when you're battling a terrible disease like we are, like Alzheimer's and dementia. So anything you can use to battle it, and if we can use the science of smell to help us, that's why we're working with the folks from International Flavors and Fragrances.
Right. Listen, let me just, as Woody Allen said, interject something at this particular juncture. David, I spoke to a medical professional expert in Harvard trained for the article who said to me that really there hasn't been a lot of clinical studies and that type of of that type in this field, and that he kind of respected what you were doing as almost like a vanguard or pioneering this type of stuff. Which to me was kind of funny, because you told me that this grew out of kind of, like a brunch conversation, and you were introduced by, mutual, like your daughters were friends, and you got introduced to the fellow at International Fragrances, and you were talking, and you kind of came onto this idea of doing this, which, it's not the most, you wouldn't think that's the most conventional route to doing something that has, medical implications and that type of thing. But then again, you guys know your professions very well. You know the Hebrew home and the needs of your residents very well, and this guy knows fragrances very well. So perhaps the whole thing did, kind of get started in an informed way.
It stated it perfectly. And sometimes you start in one direction, you end up in another, and sometimes the conversation, which is just pleasantries, turns into something. And that's why it's so great when you love what you do, and he loves what he does, and I love what I do, and you just talk to enough people about enough things, you find that there's intersection. So I think one of the exciting things about the story, Corey, that you helped to tell was the fact that it's two different worlds coming together sort of out of nowhere, out of happenstance, and the benefit is apparent, and the future is exciting. And it just starts from a very innocent conversation at a breakfast of two men whose daughters are best friends, and all of a sudden now you have something which is not only exciting, but has
cutting edge.
A future. Yeah.
Or it could be just that the Yankees are the answer to every problem in life. No, I'm not a Yankee fan, so I'm not putting it forth, but I know you are.
As a Red Sox fan, I would never say that. So.
Are you a Red Sox fan? I
am.
Yeah, I should have asked what your allegiance. As a reporter, I should have asked what your political allegiances were before we even proceeded with this thing. But so no, it's amazing, and just on like an entertainment level, just to to talk to some of these people about their what it was like to watch Roger Maris. I mean, the fellow who was in his 90s talking about watching Babe Ruth. I mean, describing what it was like. First of all, at Gehrig's, the time when Gehrig called himself the luckiest man on the face of the earth, and then describe what it was like to watch Babe Ruth hit home runs at Yankee Stadium. I mean, we're not going to have that again pretty soon. That's a touchstone to history that we're not really going to have in a couple of years. So I was grateful to talk to those people.
Think about it, though, Corey. Here you're 90 years old, and you're in a facility, and you're perhaps not up to date on technology. You really probably don't follow the news as closely as you used to, and yet you're the expert on something, because
Right.
None of us at my age could ever relate to having seen those players play or been in that ballpark for those experiences. So it really makes them the stronger one. It makes them the one that are the expert. And what we like about these things is it really transfers that power and that experience. So we're learning from them, which is the great thing of working with seniors. It's interesting when you see things that go on in life that throw the generations of today, whether it be something horrible like 9/11 or things that happened in the stock market in 2009. And the real stability and the comfort comes from people that have lived through these things before. Right. They lived through world wars. They've seen stock market crashes. And they, who are supposed to be the frail ones that are being cared for, become the experts and the leaders and the source of comfort.
Especially
it's very interesting.
Now when we think that our younger generation is like, knows everything and can Google everything and has the answer to everything because they're holding these little things in their hands that they can click on and stuff. So it's nice to have that, the older generation does, has, like you said, lived through a lot and can be regarded with some authority and some expertise and that type of thing.
And
respect. Yeah.
Yep.
One more thing is just the way that they created the sense I thought was interesting in that the international refresh me on the name.
Flavors and Fragrances.
Flavors and Fragrances, based in Manhattan, huge company, and that I wasn't familiar with before this. They said that they have a way of kind of snapshotting fragrances, and they can go in and take a rose or something and duplicate its scent. But for this particular exhibit or program, they also have a kind of a vast bank of recipes, fragrance recipes and flavors that they kind of you need popcorn, they whip together popcorn, they need hot dogs, so that's how they kind of did it. You decided upon what's half dozen fragrances you wanted, and they kind of whipped them up for you. And interesting enough, I said, well, why didn't you consider Cracker Jacks? You said peanuts and Cracker Jacks. You said because enough people have this kind of aversion even to the notion of peanuts because of peanut allergies that you decided, man, we won't do peanuts. Even though it's not allergenic, the smell, it would be a chemical reproduction, but also sweat. And of course, like I said, leave it to the New York Times. Like, why, on the record here, why didn't you go with sweat? So,
well, that might be a future version. We wanted to sort of get people involved first before we give them the stark realities.
Yeah,
sweat is very much
I want Derek Jeter's, smell in the locker room. That's what I'm waiting for. So
there you go.
Yeah. Okay, well, David, thanks for coming on and talking about this interesting program you got going up in the Hebrew home in Riverdale.
I really appreciate the time. Nice talking with you guys.
Okay.
And Corey, how quickly did that go from a story in the New York Metro section to the front page? I mean, who said, my God? And I sat back there. I didn't say anything. It's unbelievable what they're doing and the freakishness of how it came about.
Yeah.
Two daughters.
I mean, as far as front page stories at the Times, or now that print is declining, and now digital versions of reading these stories is rising. We'll say prominent placement on the homepage, or the amount of attention that it gets on social media. In other words, the Times deciding that the story is prominent enough to be on the front page or its digital equivalent. That, it's kind of a mixed bag. Either a story can be so important that it gets on the front page, or it can be where they think they have a mix. They don't want every story to be like this grave, important, story. They want also a couple light stories as well. So that's where this falls in. I mean, it had a good timing with opening day coming. People are thinking about baseball. They want people, when they look at the paper or the homepage or however they get their feed for the Times, to see a mix of stories. So I got lucky in that the timing was good. They needed a light story. They needed one. This has enough of it's light, but it has a little bit of an interest, a human interest. Everyone has parents. Everyone knows people who are reaching the stage of their life. So, I mean, I think it has broad enough appeal that these were the reasons. I don't know how the hand works behind the curtain. I just was grateful when the editor was like, "Hey, they're thinking about this for page 1," and I was like, "What? Great,
But
so
it is. You could just see now other senior citizens' homes, say in St. Louis or up in Boston, or that had big baseball fan base doing that, because it doesn't seem to be that expensive. Putting up artifacts and maybe just getting the flavor might be a little bit expensive.
And it also pulls in mainstream people. I mean, you may not want to read a medical quarterly about dementia and loss of memory, but you may want to read a story about how the Yankees tie in, and you get to read a little bit of your favorite team or that, and make it and lighten it up. And it actually lightens up the people who we're talking about too. So they're not just patients.
Well, Malachi, you're heading up to the Bronx, and it's not to the Hebrew Senior Citizen Home.
Or Yankee Stadium.
You'll be heading up into Bale Buck on West 230.